Right now, over 17 million people live in a country that, by all logic, shouldn't exist. A place where farms grow on former seabeds, where airports operate below sea level, where entire cities sit lower than the ocean next to them. And yet they thrive. Look at a map of the Netherlands and you might miss it, but peel back the layers and you'll see the truth. Two-thirds of this country is at constant war with water. The Netherlands, literally the lowlands, lives up to its name. About 26% of it lies below sea level, another 30% is barely above. And at the edge of it all, one of the most violent seas in Europe, the North Sea, shallow, storm-prone, and merciless. But the threat doesn't just come from the sea. Three major rivers, the Rhine, Meuse, and Scheldt, carry snowmelt and floodwaters from the heart of Europe, and all three end right here. That means the Dutch aren't just guarding one front, they're surrounded. Spring melts in Switzerland, summer storms in Germany, or even a strong wind off the coast can be enough to push this fragile country to the brink. This isn't theory, it's history. In 1421, the St. Elizabeth's flood tore through the dikes. Entire villages vanished. Farmland was swallowed and never returned. The Biesbosch wetland still stands as a graveyard to that disaster. In 1717, the Christmas flood wiped out thousands across the northern provinces. Some communities lost in a single night, but nothing compares to 1953. That night, a perfect storm, high tide, wind, and pressure collided with the Dutch coast. Dikes cracked, water surged in, families were swept from their homes as waves tore through the countryside. 1,836 lives lost, 200,000 acres flooded, entire villages erased overnight. That night changed the Netherlands forever, because it wasn't just a flood, it was a reckoning. After 1953, the Dutch knew the old way wasn't enough, so they built something the world had never seen: the Delta Works. A massive, decades-long mega-project. Dams, locks, storm barriers, and levees designed to defend the country from the sea itself. The centerpiece? The Eastern Scheldt Storm Surge Barrier. Spanning 9 kilometers, it's a beast of steel and hydraulics. 62 enormous gates stand open most of the time to let tides and ecosystems breathe. But when a storm looms, they close, and the sea hits a wall. In Rotterdam, they built the Maeslandkering, 2 floating gates, each the length of the Eiffel Tower. When danger rises, these giants swing shut, sealing off the city from the sea. They're so massive they operate automatically, triggered by computer models predicting storm surges. No human decision, just math and survival. But even defense wasn't enough. The Dutch didn't just protect their land, they made more of it. Through a process called poldering, they took areas once underwater and drained them dry. First, they built dikes to hold the sea back. Then they pumped out the water, historically with windmills, now with massive electric and diesel engines that run 24/7. The result? Cities where there used to be sea. Entire provinces like Flevoland were built on reclaimed land. It's the newest province in the Netherlands, established in 1986, and none of it existed 100 years ago. What was once open water is now home to farms, roads, forests, and neighborhoods. But there's a catch. Polders are bowls, lower than the water outside. If a dike fails, water doesn't flow in gently, it explodes through. One crack can flood everything in minutes. This isn't land, it's a tightrope. That's why the Dutch take water management more seriously than any nation on Earth. Over 17,000 kilometers of dikes crisscross the country, primary, secondary, tertiary, enough to wrap around half the planet. And they're constantly inspected, repaired, upgraded. Sensors detect stress. Emergency crews drill for breaches. Some dikes are being reinforced to withstand not just floods, but earthquakes. They don't just build, they watch, constantly. Because when your country is built below the sea, you don't get second chances. For centuries, the strategy was simple: hold the water back. But now, the Dutch are rethinking that. In the early 2000s, they launched the Room for the River program. The idea? Don't just block the rivers, give them room to flood, safely. Engineers carved new channels, lowered floodplains, relocated farms and even homes, built parks that can double as emergency basins during storms. It sounds counterintuitive, but it works. Letting water go where it wants to go is often smarter than trying to stop it. They even built floating neighborhoods, houses that rise and fall with water levels. In some places, they've returned farmland back to wetlands, turning a liability into a buffer zone. Water management in the Netherlands isn't just technical, it's political and ancient. Their system of water boards dates back to the 13th century. That's older than the Dutch monarchy, older than the United States, older than most governments on Earth. Every region elects water board officials, people whose job is to manage dikes, canals, and pumping stations. It's local democracy for survival. Here, water isn't just a force of nature, it's a civic duty. And now, the stakes are rising again. Sea levels along the Dutch coast rose about 2 millimeters per year for most of the 20th century. Now, it's faster. Projections say plus 0.5 meters, stress test, plus 1 meter, system overhaul, plus 2 meters by 2100, all bets are off. And it's not just the sea. Rivers are flooding more often from upstream storms and glacier melts. Rainfall is more intense. Groundwater pressure is shifting. Even the best defenses ever built weren't designed for what's coming next. But the Dutch aren't waiting. They're testing nature-based solutions like the sand motor, a 21 million cubic meter deposit of sand pumped along the South Holland coast in 2011. Instead of building seawalls, they let waves and tides spread the sand naturally, reinforcing beaches and dunes over time. It's low impact, long-term, elegant. And it's just one piece of a larger puzzle. Smart sensors, real-time satellite data, predictive modeling, technology is now part of the Dutch defense arsenal. They're exporting their knowledge to flood-prone cities like New Orleans, Jakarta, and Bangladesh. Because one thing is clear, the Netherlands may be the first country to fight this battle, but it won't be the last. What the Dutch have built is more than just infrastructure. It's a mindset, a way of living with risk, planning for the worst, engineering for the impossible. Every dike, every pump, every storm barrier is a line drawn in the sand, not just against nature, but against complacency. They've reclaimed land that should never have been land, defended cities that should never have stood. And in the face of rising seas, they aren't retreating. They're adapting, because when your country sits below sea level, you don't get the luxury of denial. You get to build, or you get swallowed.